The indignity of suffering. The last topic that we were discussing is how grief is like aloe vera, how things get stuck on aloe vera gel and then it gets dried up and it becomes more difficult to remove it. This one has been going on in my mind for more than a month now, and I think that is where it is very important to talk about things right as, like, it is okay to obviously collect and marinate on stuff and think about it and everything, but at some point you should just like do it, so I feel like I have lost a little bit of the touch from the topic. Like, it doesn't feel as super like fabulous as I felt about it, but I will try to gather my thoughts and present it in the manner that I intended to, or at least as close to that as possible. The indignity of suffering is a discussion about how people who go through something, there is a shame attached to going through something. Like, going through something is more often than not an isolated experience. It is not something that just happens and then, like, it is not objectively neutral. It is very much, there is like, if I go through something, then not only have I gone through it, I now also carry negative feelings around the fact that I have gone through it. So the next time that I reach out for something that I find hopeful, or the next time that I attempt to do something that might help me, or the next time that I try to be there for myself or for someone else in a manner that is required, there is a voice that reminds you of the horrors of the past. Like, you carry it, that indignity, you carry it within your heart as you move forward in life, which is why letting go becomes even more difficult. It is almost like there is something indignified for about being a human. There are so many examples that that I have collected. One of them is in the show Alif, I think episode 14 or something. They are moving houses, right? The main lead and her and her best friend are arranging stuff and everything. And the main lead is an actor. So her best friend suggests her to get her parents some media literacy, or to present her house in a manner that is appropriate for someone who is a celebrity now and stuff like that. And she's like, I do not want to lie. And the best friend is like, but you have to lie. That is what we do. That is what we do as actors. We perform and we lie. We perform a version of life that the audience can escape to. These are not exactly her words, but that was the essence. Like, we perform a version that people must not relate to. More often than not, it should not be something that reminds them of something. It should be something that makes them escape. And that is very much valid given the exhaustion we have of life, and especially the overexposure to infinite amount of knowledge, in very short durations of time. It kind of fries your brain up to be more like critical or to be more regulated. So she talks about how there is aversion to perform, that because that is what the audience expect of you. The audience want you to portray a version of life that is better than theirs so that they can escape to it. It is also hope for some people, but like most often it is something that people kind of want to idealize so that they can put it on a pedestal, so that they do not relate to it. There is nobility of suffering. The indignity of having suffered is something that is kind of more nuanced, but the one version that we are fed very regularly is the nobility of suffering. So many Indian soaps, especially now, talk about how sacrifice and suffering is something pious and something noble, and it is something that you have to go through to deserve happiness. It is fed in our minds that you have to have paid a price to deserve joy and to deserve anything good in life. You should have a receipt of all the pain that you have gone through. That is more known as an aspect, but what is kind of subconscious and not so apparent is the indignity associated with it, and it is even more widespread than the nobility aspect. It is like, how the beauty standards are, especially for even for grown up adult women. The beauty standards are someone who has a very soft skin, or someone, for example, I struggle with dark circles, so the beauty standards ideally do not involve dark circles, unless the West wants to make a trend out of it. But like, there is that part is absent, because anything that we idolize should be idolized in a manner that removes life experiences from it. You don't want to attach, you don't want to be reminded of your lived experiences, which is absolutely stupid. You do not want anything that reminds you that the other person is also a human being, and because if I am reminded of it, then I realize that I am close to it, that the distance I am creating in my mind regarding all of this is not that great, and at the end of the day, there is something that connects us. There is some sense of proximity between the observer and the one being observed. But if I idolize it, then that distance kind of benefits me. That distance is beneficial because I can keep on admiring something without having to relate with it, because the moment I relate with something, it will make me want to, it will make me have to face feelings that are things that I'm avoiding. Like, if I am numbing my own inner intuition, if I am numbing my pain, then looking at someone who is going through pain, or who has visible evidence of any sort of life lived through pain, that remembrance will trigger something in me, and I do not want to remember that, because I am numbing it. To look at someone who is fulfilling their potential, who is living a life that is not just 0 to 100, but the process of the entire thing. If I relate my like that with someone, then I will also have to acknowledge that that potential also exists within me, that the distance is not as great as I have created in my mind. It is not 0 to 100. If I do not have a perfect idealized version, then the humanness of the experience will connect us, and that connection will require me to remember myself. It will require me to remember things that I want to forget, that I feel are too heavy to carry, and it will also be a call for action. It will be a call for accountability. I will have to be accountable. I will have to realize that I am not as helpless as my mind wants me to believe. Even though whatever form of suffering that there is, even though that is very much valid, this is not to undermine the pain that you have gone through. Absolutely not. This is to say that we create idealized versions of people because it benefits us. It softens the blow of life and the unfairness of it, that we can experience from time to time. You know, for example, there are like, if there are people who, even the idea of anyone in the public eye, their lives are curated so perfectly, so that you can create a distance from it, so that you do not look at them as human beings. Obviously this is much more nuanced. When I say people in public eye, I mean people who are genuinely sincere. Most of them are not. Most of them are people who do not have that touch of humanness within them, because maybe they have numbed themselves for that long, you know and this particular section that I'm talking about are people who we don't know anything about, who might be involved in way more horrific things than we can imagine, you know. So those are not the people I talk about when I say that they present their idealized version, because their humanity creates a connection that is very tangible, and that is something that not everyone can handle, you know. So people in public eye, as in people who genuinely have some humanness about them, even they are forced to portray a version of reality that creates a distance, you know. There are so many people on social media who create content, right? But we are more likely to follow people who already have a huge number of following, you know, rather than someone who has like 217. We are more likely to do something that has already been done, you know, to follow in the herd mentality, to blend in the crowd. Because if I do something that has not been done, that is out of the norm, that is something that is not natural in the surrounding that I am in, then I will stand out. To stand out has a cost, you know. The cost of individualism is attention. You are being looked at, and what if I am not being comfortable being looked at? And to be, you know, sort of to be easy with the fact that you are being perceived, you have to have some sense of conviction in what you are doing, right? So for example, I have a nephew, my second cousin's child, and he was with one of my cousins who was like 10 or 11 at that point. So she was being very rude to that nephew, you know. She obviously, they are kids and everything, and the nephew was like 6 or something. So she was being really rude to him, and I was like, you don't behave like that with a child, you know. And she's like, no, it's okay, it is fine, it is him. And I was like, what do you mean by it is him? And then it clicked in my mind. I named some other nephew who was also the similar age of the first nephew, but he comes from a much more regulated family where his parents are much more emotionally available to him. So I'm like, if it was not nephew 1, if it was nephew 2, would you do the same? And then she went completely silent, and I went completely silent, because if it is someone who has been loved, it is easier to love them, and um, it kind of becomes imperative to love them because they have already received it, you know. It is like, how can you not love something that has already been loved? How can you not follow this person who already has 200,000 subscribers? It becomes really easy to give into it. But for me to stop and look back and be like, even though this child does not come from a family who has extremely well regulated, you know, environments, it is not super healthy. Even though this child does not come from a family like that, and even though I am 10, maybe I can choose to not do that, you know. The point I'm making is, it is easy to love something that has already been loved, because again, there is some novelty in being admired that calls for even more attention, that begs for even more admiration, you know. Like, it is almost like, obviously you should, because everyone does, while there is some sense of indignity in the process of being a human. There is some sense of, like, you look at a person who has only started content creation, for example. There is a person who writes or something, and she posts every day, but it is not like a huge account. So I hope she gets all the success she wants at some point, but right now it is not there, right? People, right now it is not, like, when it is a boom and everyone is following, then everyone will follow, the snowball effect of being admired or whatever. But right now it is not there, like, almost, because, for example, I am a person who is not following through with my dream of content creation or whatever it is, and I look at someone who has 89 followers, and she posts every day, and she is regular about it and everything. It will remind me of the fact that there is a possibility, you know. Like, this is the behind the scenes of the process. This is the spectrum of being somewhere and getting somewhere else, and the entire spectrum in the middle. So all of that, if it is visible to me, then it will ask for me to remember that I can do this as well. Even if I do not want to do content creation, just looking at someone else's process of getting there or attempting or beginning something, that is not suffering necessarily, but the point is that that kind of reminds me of something that I do not want to remember, which is why I want to create a distance from it. For example, it is easier to like support international causes, and even people. For example, when it came to Black Lives Matter, there were a lot of Indians who are now silent on casteism and the hatred against religious minorities in India, who were really, really vocal about the Black Lives Matter movement when it was going on in US. That is not to say that you should not support international causes. There is no limit to how much we can learn and how much we can come together as a community. The point that I'm trying to make, like quote, please do not read in between the lines. Please do not listen to things that I am not saying. So what I'm saying is, as much as you should educate yourself regarding everything, why are there people who are very vocal about something that is happening at a distance, while they go absolutely silent or even ignore or they deny the existence of similar systems of oppression in their proximity? Someone who is a professor somewhere and talks about gender equality all their life comes back home to a house where the gender roles are very much defined. Why is there a silence there? Because if I notice something in my proximity, it also shows that there is a possibility for change, and that the responsibility of that lies on me. I have to acknowledge it. I have to understand my role in it. I have to take accountability for how silent I have been about it, how much I have to learn. What kind of person will it mean for me to be if I acknowledge that I have not been paying attention about it for this long? Like that what kind of image will I portray when I say that I have been a gender studies professor in the university, but in my house it has not been practiced? So that kind of liminal space of what identity will it show if I let go of the old and the new is still not here, that is scary. That accountability is scary, but it is important to take it, right? It is important to understand that that people when they are going through something, people at the end of the day are people. So if I am someone who cares about something, then I should also be someone who cares about everything. That is kind of the point that I'm trying to get at. But ultimately, this is what I'm saying. There is an indignity associated with being a human, about going through something. There is people, when you are in friend circles, and like, I hope you have better friendships than this, but there have been times where if you mention your pain, like, they would rather not have that. They would rather you pretend that it is fine, because I don't know, because obviously these were friendships that were supposed to end at some point, but also because maybe it reminds them of how much they have numbing their own pain. We do not want to associate ourselves in any manner with a version of reality that shows humanness, because we want to numb ourselves, because it is easier. But then we do not realize the cost that we are paying for that numbness. The cost is lack of connection. It is the absence of a community where you are powerful enough and strong enough to show up as vulnerable as possible, where you are empowered by someone else being vulnerable. Like, there is no novelty in suffering, but there is also no indignity in suffering. What is happening is painful, and what is happening is really unfortunate, but it does not say something about you. It is not a part of your identity. How you move through it will become a part of your identity. How you deal with it, how it makes you feel, and how heavy it is, all of it will be a part of your identity, in the sense that you will deal with these aspects of it. But it happening does not say anything about you. It happening does not say anything about the future prospects in the same category. It does not say anything about it. It is something that is happening, is unfortunate and painful, but it is also neutral to you as an individual. I hope I made sense, and I hope I could cover most of that which I was meaning to say. But there are other screenshots that I have taken this regarding this topic, and I'll open my WhatsApp to see that. One second. So yeah, regarding the novelty of suffering, it is obviously, have I yet endured enough pain to deserve a glimpse of peace? Like, have I done enough to deserve this much amount of joy? That is the novelty of suffering. But again, there is also the fact that my suffering did not make me anything. I suffered, and then I made myself gentle and kind. I made myself strong, and I made myself good. So that requires accountability, and that requires taking hold of your own life. And this is not to say that you can do this while you are in the eye of the storm. Do not misunderstand this as get over it. That is not the point. The point is, at some point you will be able to do it, because you definitely can. I hope there is help for you. I hope there are people around for you. I hope systems and environments in which all of this is happening, either you are out of those environments or you get better systems, and I hope all of this becomes easier for you. But at some point you will be at the center of the change that happens in your life, because you are at the center of your life. And this I am saying to my younger self, not to personally. If, like, the way it makes sense to me is if it makes sense to me saying it to my younger self. So I hope when I say all of this, there is not, while trying to be nuanced, I hope we do not miss the point. Like, I hope we do not go into so much detail, the painting is not so much zoomed out, that we lose sight of what we are looking at. So anyways, also regarding the novelty of suffering, there is, I don't want to grow a thick skin. I want my skin to stay as thin as it was made, and everything outside of that to be softer. This is posted by How Mental, and I don't know if these are their words. Oh, these are Brianna Pastor's word. I don't know if I'm saying their name right. Also, one of my favorite quote: if I am to grow now, it will be through grieving. It will be through this deepening I didn't choose. I'm just reading the quotes at this point because I forgot to incorporate them throughout the video. But anyways, so well. So yeah, another one for this topic is, and God, it is me, and I'm sorry that it is me. It is I, and not whom I ought to be. God, I am so sorry for being me. This one really hits hard, because what you feel like is a punishment, like me being me, has felt like the biggest punishment for so long. Especially all of this that I'm talking about. Before 2020 was a different life. I am not talking about her. I don't remember her. I barely remember after 2020, but like whatever mugged up understanding I have is of all of this that I'm saying is of between 2020 to present. So for long I have felt like me being me is the biggest punishment that can be it my ADHD and the absolute horrors that is, and how painfully difficult and heavy, and yet how underestimated all of this is, or it being the intensity at which I feel things, which kind of isolates you from connection, because it because at some point you get tired of how intense everything is. So obviously uh, people around you are also humans and going through their life and stuff like that, so that kind of thing happens, and there is friction that wouldn't have been there if I was not me. But that is a topic for another day. But I hope I made sense in this one, and that should be it for this one now.